Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to New Psalmist's Town Hall. Tonight is an educator's town hall, and we are just so excited and delighted that you've chosen to be a part of this and chosen to be with us as we look at what's going to happen educationally in Maryland as we go into September, into this semester. It's a new world for all of us. It's a world that we were not anticipating, a world we were not expecting. But we do serve a God who gives us what we need in the situations in which we find ourselves. Our job is to determine how we are to respond, how we are to make things work, how we are to make it happen. And tonight, that's why we've gathered with all of our educators, with all of our persons who work in school systems and the like. We've come together so that we could begin to look at how we educate our sons and daughters, boys and girls, in the coming school year. If the mandate of the educational system is to make sure that persons come forward and are educated, they've taken away the normal tools that we would use, and now we're forced to use new tools. But we will make brick without straw, and the brick will still be strong, and the brick will still withstand what it must. So tonight, would you just open with me in a word of prayer? Father, in Jesus' name we gather, thanking you for our opportunity to share with educators from across the board and share with persons who will be in classrooms, in schools, who will be doing special work and giving special instruction. We thank you, God, that we can come together now and ask questions, seek guidance, learn, understand, and above all, be encouraged. Lord, we cannot change what we cannot change, but we can find a way to make all things work. And you told us that all things work together for our good. And so we believe that there is a lesson to be learned, there is benefit to be gained. There is something new to be discovered in this reality that seems almost dark and dismal. But we trust you, and we trust what you've put in us, preparing us for this moment. And so we come to you now asking you to open this conversation that we might learn things fresh and new. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, everybody, tonight, as we gather, for all of those who are sharing on YouTube, on Facebook Live, the New Psalmist website, for those who are sharing on Zoom with us, we're just so delighted to have you on all these different platforms. And this is going to be archived online on YouTube, and you'll be able to go back to it. You'll be able to send your friends to it and tell others to share it, to watch it, to be inspired from it and gain some new insights. If you have questions while presentations are being made, while statements are being made, or if you've come to the session with questions, write them in the Q&A. You'll see at the bottom that there's a Q&A. And for those of you who are on Zoom, write your questions in the Q&A for those on Zoom. For those of you who are on Facebook Live or on YouTube, or on New Psalmist website, put your messages in the chat. Put your messages in the chat. We've got chat helpers in there. We've got monitors who will be culling the questions and sending them in so that they all get in. We want to answer as many questions as we can tonight, because our aim is to come up with every person having creative ideas about how they are going to make their situation work. Working tonight, moderating this massive conference tonight is our own Dr. Myra Smith. Myra is one of our deaconess at New Psalmist, and I've known Myra for more years than I care to count. And I've watched her educational career just take off. And she is one of the finest educators that I know. And so when I was putting this together, I felt it not robbery to call her and say, Myra, I need your help. I need you to pull this together, because I'm no educator, but I need you to pull this together. And she readily accepted the challenge. So tonight, would you help me welcome Dr. Myra Smith, who's going to guide us in this?
Thank you, Bishop. I'm honored to moderate. I'm always here to help our outstanding bishop and our church keep everyone informed, because we believe in knowledge and preparing our members and the global society. And before we begin, we have an awesome group of panel members. And I would like our panel members to begin with a brief introduction, to tell us a little about yourself and the work that you are doing. Beginning with Cheryl Pasteur.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and thank you, Bishop Thomas. It certainly is a pleasure to be with all of you this evening. This is a distinguished panel indeed. I am currently on the Baltimore County School Board. I retired as the principal from Randallstown High School in Baltimore County. I spent the bulk of my career in Baltimore County, even though I started in Baltimore City and then had a very different career between Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Education is my lifeblood. So I am, again, very thankful, very blessed to be here. And I'm going to just stop right there.
Thank you, Ms. Pasteur. Ms. Tamara Harris Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Tamara Harris Murphy. I'm the current assistant principal of Edmondson Heights Elementary School in Baltimore County. My teaching career began in Alabama. And then when I moved back to the Maryland area, I taught for a few years in Baltimore City and then transferred over to Baltimore County, where I was a classroom teacher and a staff development teacher prior to my current tenure. So thank you for having me.
Excellent, excellent. Ms. Tracy Pratt.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Pratt. I'm the principal at Sandtown Winchester Achievement Academy. I have been a principal with Baltimore City Schools for 8 years. This is going into my 8th year. I would like to say hello to my Sandtown family, because there's so many that are members of New Psalmist, as well as my Superior Network 6 team. So thank you all for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here, and I hope that I can give some information that'll be helpful.
Excellent, awesome, thank you and welcome. Dr. Lisa Lowry Lomas.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Smith and Bishop Thomas, for inviting me this evening and including me in this very important discussion. I am Dr. Lisa Lowry Lomas, and I am a clinician in private practice with an office in Ellicott City. I've been in the field of psychology for my entire career in a variety of different settings, working in the circuit courts, teaching psychology for 10 years, I'm originally from Chicago, and so I've worked with educators in the Chicagoland area doing professional development and workshops, as well as in the District of Columbia, in the state of New York, and in the state of Maryland, in a variety of different settings. I've worked with parents and with children as well. I am delighted to be here, and I'm very impressed that you're having this town hall, and I'm delighted to be a part of it. Thank you.
Excellent, welcome. Dr. Damon Harris.
Evening, and thank you, New Psalmist family, for allowing me into your. I'm really humbled to be invited to be a part of such a prestigious panel. My name is Damon Harris. I am a principal at Wheaton Woods Elementary School. It's in Montgomery County in Rockville. I'm also the co-founder and co-leader of the Building Our Network of Diversity Project. We call ourselves the Bond Project. And we are a group of men who work to recruit and retain, develop, and empower male educators of color in our region, but also nationally. I've been teaching for about 25 years in one form or another. I started my first 11 years in Baltimore County, teaching in various roles, and my last 13 or so here in Montgomery County. And I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. And Dr. Gwendolyn Mason.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much, Bishop Thomas, and to you, Dr. Smith, my dear friend and colleague, for this wonderful opportunity to be a part of this panel to discuss this important topic. I've had the joy of serving in the field of education for 40 years. I'm the former chief for special education and student services in Prince George's County, where I was responsible not only for the provision of services for students with disabilities, but also counseling services, psychological services, school health services, homeless, and it goes on and on. My career also was in Montgomery County, where I had the pleasure, of course, Dr. Smith, of meeting you. And in that capacity, I was their director of special education services for 10 years. And so it's an honor to be a part of this discussion. As I ended my career in Prince George's County, I was a part of the executive cabinet team that really had to think through how we would virtually provide services for all of our students. So this is a great opportunity to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mason, and thank you to all of our panel members. We have questions in the Q&A already and questions in the chat. So let's get started with this question. I know that Dr. Mason, this is for you. It's paramount on the minds of parents and some of our students, particularly those at the secondary level. In your county, Prince George's County, about 11% of the population were identified as receiving special education services last year. So can you describe how your office supported principals and teachers as schools pivoted to virtual learning for these students with individual educational programs or IEPs?
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. It was imperative that central office staff in Prince George's County, first and foremost, work collaboratively with the Department of Curriculum and Instruction and the Technology Office, because those particular divisions were going to be key in being able to support teachers and to support principals. So we worked with the Curriculum Office to look at the instructional lessons that would be provided during the COVID period. We discussed the model and the plan in which how we expected special education teachers, speech pathologists, counselors, and psychologists to be able to provide services during that particular time. We then also held town hall meetings with all of the teachers and principals as well, so they would understand completely what the magnitude of this process will look like. But I will say, as I close out this statement, that of all of the educators who had to provide services virtually, our special education teachers were not only challenged with providing services, there was a federal mandate that still required conducting IEP meetings. It still required trying to meet the provision of FAPE. So it was in fact a challenge, but those were the critical steps that were taken so that the lessons were planned and designed that would be able to support students with disabilities.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. Dr. Harris, I'm going to pivot to you right now. We know that communication is essential. And we know that some leaders, teachers and leaders experience round-the-clock communication because parents were anxious, students were anxious. And so we know that, staff members really want to respond to their communities. So I'm interested in, as a leader, how did you facilitate and guide your staff in this new reality of schooling? So can you describe some strategies that help keep your staff members and community members informed? And so how did you also help your staff members create boundaries, all the while ensuring that staff were accessible to students and parents?
Sure. So one way to respond to that is pretty simple, and the other is a little more complicated. And I'll talk about the more complicated one first. It's sort of the way we talk about with our staff about communicating with our families. We tell them with instruction and assessment that we want them to use multiple and varied forms to reach their kids or to assess their knowledge. Well, this time around, we had to do the same thing with communication with our families. So we had to have multiple and varied forms of communication with our families. So that meant, yes, there are traditional emails, often translated for some of our families because the school in which I teach, about 2/3 of our families are English learners. And we also used apps that translated for our students, like the Remind app that our families communicated back and forth with their teachers, which is as simple as a text. You know, it's almost like social media. It's just a quick back and forth in the parent's home language or preferred language. We use Class Dojo to communicate with our families in a similar fashion. I know a lot of schools do that too. As a school, we use robocalls and text messages that through our robocall system with emails also in multiple languages. I just today sent out 300 snail mail letters that I had to fold and stamp myself on the way out of our building. So that's a sort of a bunch of different ways that we try to connect with families. The other side of that is pretty simple in giving teachers permission to turn it off. It's okay that at 4 o'clock, you can be off the clock, right? Take care of yourself, take care of your family, because we can't be whole if you aren't whole. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. Last thing I'll say is we also encouraged our folks and we set up a system in which we leveraged our paraeducators who have historical roots in our community. So they are deeply connected with our families. So those paraeducators could, one of them is probably texting me now just to say, hey, I heard this thing in the community. How do you want to address it? So we leverage all of us to connect with our families in multiple ways, but we also know we need to set it aside in the evenings.
Excellent, thank you. And Dr. Lisa Lowry Lomas, very timely. There's a question in the Q&A, and your question is coming up. And so I'll cover both of those, the Q&A question and this question as well. We know that school is a safe space for many of our students. It's the haven. They look forward to that. They know that someone is there for them, or I can walk in that building, someone can see my face, I'm not having a good morning. And talking with students and families and staff members also, that's the normative aspect of the school culture. Many staff members were concerned that they did not regularly hear from students about their fears during this, the onset of COVID, and we're still in it. So this could have a tremendous impact on the mental health of students and teachers and staff members as well. So can you talk about strategies to help administrators, teachers, and students cope? And how can staff protect their mental health? And so, and the question in the chat from Dr. Jacqueline Fulton is also what mental health supports are available for teachers and support staff. So that's twofold. So you're going to answer that.
So, sorry, speaking of people calling, so forgive that. The pandemic has created isolation for all of us, and it has created challenges in many, many ways. And one of them is not having an organic way to have conversations and to see each other and engage and interact. So one of the strategies that I would encourage teachers to do is to create an opportunity for their students to share. Create 5 minutes at the beginning of class, 5 minutes at the end of class, or perhaps even during a curriculum. It can be incorporated into part of the curriculum as an opportunity to share and do a check-in and talk about what's going on, whether it's positive or negative. So it's creating the safe space virtually. Also, they can provide a topic if they have an open forum and the kids don't just volunteer, they can bring a topic to this opportunity and to this safe space. Additionally, I thought that the kids could reach out to the teachers. Teachers can create a Google number, which is free. And so it's an opportunity for those students who have phones, cell phones or house phones that they can call and leave messages. The teachers can have after hours, 30 minutes. For office hours, but they would be virtual office hours. Dr. Harris made a really good point about setting boundaries and how important it is for the teachers to be able to turn it off. And so that is a strategy that I think is important for the staff and the faculty, because our teachers dedicate their lives to our students and to their careers. And oftentimes they're never off the clock. They leave the school building, they go home, they're grading papers. And it's important, since we are now working and living in the same space, that we do set boundaries for ourselves and for the people that we work with. Even creating a different space in the house where you work versus where you're sleeping or spending time with your family can also really be critical when it comes to social and emotional balance for our teachers in their lives. So those are some strategies that I would give. Boundaries are very, very important. Boundaries for yourself and boundaries for the students. If you get the Google number, make sure you give them certain hours and you turn it off. It's not 2 o'clock in the morning phone calls. So boundaries are critical.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Lisa Lowry
Hey,
Lomas.
Dr. Smith, could I add one thing to
Sure.
that also?
Yes.
So, Zooms can also be opportunities to have lunch bunches and extra recesses, in a virtual space where there is just us being us, right? Just the teachers and the students or the administrators just being family, right? Like we're just hanging out, just hanging out and playing games. It's another opportunity for that too.
Great. And I was thinking also of counselor lunch bunch, because I know that some counselors in schools, many times they have those special groups, friends group, or there's been a death in the family group. And so I'm sure that your counselors have an opportunity to pull those small groups virtually as well. So I'm going to pivot now to Ms. Harris and your question, and I'm going to also connect to a question that's in our Q&A as well. Schools, we know that collaboration was essential as schools pivoted from face-to-face learning to virtual learning. I apologize, somebody's leaving a message. So beginning this fall, schools will return to this virtual learning platform. So can you speak to, Ms. Harris, how did you collaborate with your principal, staff members, and PTA leaders to ensure success in the delivery of this new model, moving from, I guess, March to June, and as you are moving to the school year? And so then there's a platform Q&A, and I'll come back to you for that Q&A question.
Okay, so I'm happy to say that our collaboration and communication has not stopped. I know Dr. Harris just spoke of cutting off, but it's important for us to be transparent with the teachers and with the staff and with community members and with our PTA. So my principal and I, first of all, it is an honor serving under her. And like I shared with the panel, I am brand new to this position in January. So serving under her and just watching her leadership, just that constant communication. We meet on a daily basis, sometimes face-to-face, sometimes in the virtual platform, continuing our meetings with our instructional leadership team, which is comprised of the reading specialist, math resource teacher, one school counselor. We have 2 in our building. One of our school counselors, our special educator that coordinates our IEP and SST meetings, and just that constant communication with them as well. We do obviously respect that it is summer, and we do always say, this is optional, and they do join. We had one join from the beach the other day. So just that constant communication, being transparent. When we have pop-up meetings with executive leadership, my principal and I always meet to debrief. After that meeting, we meet again in the morning to craft our emails to the staff. And then from there, we send an email out to the staff, because just like the families are anxious, our teachers and staff are anxious too. And then anytime they respond, it may just be one. We just actually sent one out last week, and we had a couple teachers send in some questions, and we responded as best we could. But just being transparent, even though it is summer, just making sure they're still in the loop. And then also, as you know, PTA does tireless work throughout the entire school year. And again, just being responsive to their emails. We're actually coordinating with the PTA now, with a local church for donations, and just making sure that we're clear with the message of, we cannot accept like gift cards and different things, but these are the items that you can share with the community. So again, just wrapping up, just being transparent, not waiting weeks and weeks and weeks, because we all have friends at different schools and we never want our teachers to hear information from a friend in another school and then we have not shared the information with them. So just again, being transparent, even though it is, you know, summertime.
And so I'm going to thank you. Here's a question that is connected to, it says, what platforms do you intend to use? And I'm reading the question verbatim, and will there be one platform? So in Baltimore County, that virtual, so can you speak to that?
Yes. So in Baltimore County, if you are a staff member, meaning you're on the payroll for Baltimore County, we use Microsoft Teams. And then our students, they use Google Meet. So our students, we meet with them on Google Meet, and staff members, we're on Microsoft Teams. And everyone, I mean, we received a crash course back in March, and the kids are doing actually sometimes better than the adults. So, yes.
Okay. Great, thank you. I'm going to pivot to our school board member, Ms. Pasteur, Baltimore County Public School, member of the Board of Education, and my colleague. Ms. Pasteur, can you share 2 or 3 accomplishments of Baltimore County Public Schools thus far, in spite of the COVID-19? What were some of the accomplishments in moving the school district forward to virtual learning and then continuing to strengthen that digital platform?
Sure. Yeah, a couple of things quickly come to mind. First, we have been for some time discussing having an equity committee in Baltimore County. So we have been able during this period to, in fact, do just that. And that's important because, as those of you who've been in Baltimore County know, there is a marked discrepancy in Baltimore County in terms of how our students are doing. We have large numbers of schools and individual students who are clearly, and I want to just use the word disenfranchised. It's not happening for them in terms of success, not because they don't want it, not because they're not capable of it, but there are a number of glaring factors that need to be addressed. And I have to say to Dr. Harris that being at one of his workshops, I left fired up and came back, and that's a piece of how we got to this point, so that we weren't just sitting in a seat, but actually walking and pressing forward about what we need in terms of our staffing, what we need to do in terms of audits and in regard to the materials. See, Dr. Harris, I was listening. In terms of the materials that we are using and need to use, et cetera. So we are doing that work. The other thing that is attached to that, which I see as of paramount importance, is that we have finally, as a board, voted to use the community eligibility program, which is critical for our children. Having been a school administrator, both in the middle school level and the high school level, I know, and you know, how very difficult it is to get children and their families to fill out the free and reduced meal forms. We've tried all manner of things to get that done because we're not trying to shame any child. And all of the things that we have done as administrators and teachers to make sure that our children are not food insecure, and understanding that there are always those families that are right at the cusp, right at that edge where they don't qualify, but they're still in need. And by now embracing CEP, we know that our schools are the entire school that is eligible will be able to participate in getting those breakfasts and lunches, and we don't have to worry about the forms, and children will no longer have to worry about whether they just missed the mark. So those are two things that clearly are tied to each other, but making sure that we are paying close attention to our children by race and by economic and social status have been disenfranchised for way too long.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Pasteur. And Ms. Pratt, this summer, I actually saw this on the news, Channel 11, about the unique program that you offered this summer for some students at your school. And so Bishop said, we have a member, she's our member. So can you describe the benefit of this face-to-face learning opportunity that was implemented at your school? Who was the target population? What was the rationale for implementation? And describe in terms of how did you mitigate risk? Because that's one of the optimal questions that staff members and parents want to know.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Smith. So when the governor moved us into phase 2, he allowed schools to have summer school. And so I jumped at the opportunity to be a part of a pilot because I knew that we had so many students that were not able to participate for various reasons, either not having technology or internet access. So students had the opportunity to engage in various ways.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm back.
Okay.
So students had different opportunities to engage. They were able to pick up packets from schools, learning packets. Assignments were on the local cable channel, and students were able to participate virtually with teachers. And in all of those areas, our participation was very low for my school, especially for our students with IEPs and 504s, and students that were struggling in language arts and math before the pandemic. So I jumped at the opportunity to be a part of the pilot. It was something I was thinking about doing anyway. And so far it has been positive. We are in our 5th and final week of the program. Once we measured our schools, our classrooms, we were able to fit between 12 and 15 students in each class. I didn't want to start that large, so we went with six students for grades 1 through 5. So far, it's been very positive. Kids come in the morning, they go through a health screening. They're asked a series of questions. We also do temperature checks before kids enter the building. As soon as they enter, they wash their hands before going to class. And everything is in that one classroom. So kids are staying within their cohort in that same classroom. So kids are eating their breakfast there, eating lunch there. Teachers have masks and shields. Students have masks. They also have partitions on their desk because they are eating in the classroom. We have staggered bathroom breaks. And the one luxury of having such small classes is that I was able to assign a custodian to each wing of our school where kids were housed. So when kids are lining up to leave to go to the restroom, the custodian is right there to clean their desk. Custodian is also there to help with cleaning the restroom when kids are leaving. So far it's been positive. We are in our 5th week. We haven't had any incidents of anyone being sick or positive for COVID. And it has gone well so far.
Great. So Ms. Pratt, hold on, because I have a question from you. I'm going to the chat. The question is, what are the updated procedures for families in Baltimore City to receive laptops and hotspots?
So it is a goal of Baltimore City to provide laptops and hotspots for all of our students that need them. Initially, the distribution was at schools, And then once we were shut down again, the distribution started to take place at headquarters. But they are putting the computers back into schools for distribution. And they should be in schools, I think, within the next 2 weeks. And we will contact parents to come out in order to receive their devices. So it is the goal for every student to have their own device. There's only one hotspot per family, but if you have 6 kids and you need 6 devices, you should be able to get them from your school if you have not retrieved them already.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So this question is about expectations of teachers. So the assistant principal and principals and also other team panel members. The question is, what are your expectations of teachers to keep students engaged virtually, especially your pre-K, those primary students? So that's the question. That's coming from our chat. So Dr. Harris.
Sure. My school is pre-kindergarten through 5th grade. And we have a discrete program that's a self-contained special education program as well. So I just met with my pre-K and Head Start teachers this morning. We were talking about like, how will that look? This has been new for all of us. So we are really at the very youngest of ages, we are really operating on an opportunity for kids to engage with the content, engage with their friends, and engage with the teachers, then take a break, right? And then engage with the content some more, and try to do it in more entertaining ways for our 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. The other piece of this, and the parents in the audience, you should really pay attention. Well, you probably already know. Like parents have gone from or changed from sort of teachers' assistants during the regular face-to-face instruction to being full-fledged co-teachers. So we really talk about cultivating our relationships with our families and doing that co-teaching together. Sometimes you have to talk with the parents and teachers without the students so that you can get an understanding about what it is, how you can help with instruction, both live, but also on the asynchronous side.
Dr. Myra, can I jump in at that point? Because I have a question, a process question. Because as a pastor, I was dealing with many parents who were overwhelmed, Dr. Harris, by guilt. Many of them sent their children to certain schools and to school because they knew they could not do homeschooling for a variety of reasons. They couldn't do homeschooling because they had to work, and they couldn't do homeschooling because they really didn't feel they had the educational skill necessary to teach their children. And throughout the spring, after I dealt with many parents, including in my own family, who were laboring under guilt because they did not feel as if they were doing right by their children. They were not being effective, quote unquote, co-teachers. So my question would be this, and it's a 2-part question. What kind of systems is the system of each Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Montgomery? What kind of systems are being built for support for each teacher? And what kind of system is being built for a connective communication between parents and students? So that, because right now parents go to PTA meetings if they go, but this is such a demandingly new process. What kind of new creation is being birthed to, or should be birthed, or would you advocate being birthed to kind of facilitate this? And last but not least, if we could also hear how these parents keep from going crazy. Okay.
Good point.
Well, I'll let Dr. Lomas Lowry talk about the mental health aspect of this. But what I'll say is that virtual options, like they are not going to be as good as face-to-face options. They just aren't. So we are really making the best of a bad situation. So I think families should we should acknowledge that up front.
No, you're the first person who said that. And I
Okay.
mean, just good to hear somebody say, hey, this is what we're working with.
Yeah. And so I try not to tell people how to feel, because feelings aren't right or wrong. They just are, right? It's those behaviors that are right or wrong. And we want to try to move now to being productive. Now we understand that this is a challenge. Now, what are we going to do to make the best of it? And every family has specific needs that they're going to need to advocate for. Right? So your children, you may have multiple children. You may have a child with special needs, child that's a language learner. Like there may be food insecurity. Every family has issues that you may have special needs for that you're going to need to advocate for. And we also acknowledge that Black children, brown children are going to be harmed by the loss of learning a little more, and the loss of these relationships a little more than the dominant culture. So what I say to families is, it's time now to reorganize the routines that you have, and it's time to reorganize some of the relationships that you have. So you need to reorganize just in terms of now, this is, you have an instructional space in your house. Right? You just have to make it. It just is what it is. That's one way to reorganize routines. Like, when do we do homework? When do we do classwork? The other piece of that is reorganizing the relationships. You now need to be talking with that teacher a lot more than a parent-teacher conference. Right? But you have to, even if you're not co-teaching all the time, you still have to be connected with that teacher. Another part of those relationships is the way you organize your time with other like-minded adults, right? So who is, like, maybe you have teachers in your congregation, Bishop Thomas, who can get together and do some tutoring for folks. Mm-hmm. So, or maybe there are parents who can get together with other parents and they can connect with each other and say, okay, who's good with math? Who can help our guys and gals with math tonight or next Thursday? Mm-hmm. Or who has Tuesday afternoon free, where you can watch the kids while they're Zooming in their classrooms. So you're gonna have to reorganize in a bunch of different ways. So that's how I would speak to the parents. And
that's so critical.
To piggyback on what Dr. Harris said, I believe a paradigm shift. I've been talking to people about, you have to shift the way you look at how we educate our children. Mm-hmm. It is not going to be the same. Additionally, I've been beating this drum of we are being re-traumatized every single day. This is not a new normal, because we've not settled in yet. There is no normal. We are still in the midst of transition and just trying to survive being traumatized every single day. You have got to give yourself a break. Dr. Harris, I appreciate what you're saying, but I am going to say guilt is wasted energy. I'm going to tell you, don't put that aside. You're doing the best you can. We all are. You know, and to Dr. Harris's point, I've also made the recommendation to some of my clients to partner with some other parents, get together so that you're not the one trying to underscore the lesson plan every day and do the homework every single day, because they have to work too, you know, and so they're trying to help little Johnny navigate this computer and also do homework and then also their schoolwork and the other children. I think partnering with having somebody in your bubble, having another family or two in your bubble that you can talk to, that you can take turns with, and perhaps social distance and get together and support each other, because not only are you supporting the children academically, but you're supporting each other emotionally as well.
Is this going
to add something, Dr. Smith?
Go right ahead.
I'd like to jump in. Bishop Thomas and I, a few weeks ago, had the conversation about that word innovation. And as educators, I'm talking as an educator who just happens to be on a school board, but we always talk about our creativity. But now is that time to be innovative, which is, it might be something new that we're bringing to something that exists. And we're making some changes. I mean, we have to face the fact that public education, as it has not been the great panacea. It just has not. It's needed an overhauling. So now what we have is an opportunity, and those of you who've spoken previously have named that tune. What are some different things that we need to do to make this work? This is what we're in. So how now, what is the lens that we are using to bring to fruition that level of success? Because if we continue to think the way we had, then those children who were struggling before are going to be even further behind, because we do know that as we speak, they are behind. And we were doing something before the pandemic, and many of them were behind. And so we have to change that paradigm. Someone already stated that. We have to change that paradigm and process whether it is working as teams, in communities, trying something different in terms of our children who don't have that Wi-Fi. What are we doing differently? And it means that school boards are going to have to be different in terms of what we do. We can't just shuffle paper around, and every single component in an education system is going to have to think differently and be on top of that game all the time. The word is being innovative now about how we reach our children.
I'm sitting here listening to you all, saying to myself, I hope every school publishes something like what you all just said, because you know, in my little field, you know, we talk about the curse of knowledge, that people know what they know and assume everybody else knows it. But the reality is nobody else knows this. And just to hear you all say it with command, I think is also a blessing to every educator listening, to know that they have to say it with command. They have to go in their classrooms and say to their parents and say to guardians, we're gonna have to do all of this differently. You cannot, and you can't feel guilty about that. That's wasted energy when you need to put that energy somewhere else. We've got to, I saw somebody write in the chat, we've got to bring a village together. You've got to call your sister, your brother, your cousin, your aunt. You got to bring this team of people around you now to help educate your child. And I hate to put it this way, you cannot leave the education of your child now in the hands of a system.
Exactly.
And those wanted to add just briefly, Bishop, to what you were saying. It's really important too. We think obviously about the families, but I think about too the support with the school staff, because literally there was a shift overnight with everyone. And, you know, just talking with the teachers, how are we going to do this? We had a panel of our school counselor, the school psychologist, our social worker, and our SEL teacher, and they actually presented to the staff just different strategies to level off, you know, their anxiety. And then on our side, just making sure, again, that if a parent emails us, I'm just going to speak for myself, you know, at 9 o'clock at night, and they say, you know, I'm free at 10 o'clock. I've made that call at 10 o'clock to Miss So-and-so's job while she, you know, she has a break. I had Sunday afternoon chats with families of students that were not engaged. And again, a lot of times parents just wanted someone to listen to them. So it's important, just like I shared with our staff, you know, when you're trying to reach a family and you can't get the parents, I said on Sundays, I always reach the grandparents. Yes. And the grandparents always give the message, because one, sometimes they were embarrassed, like, wait a minute, why isn't my grandchild, you know, involved in live lessons? And that message went directly to their children. And then the child, I said, this is my cell phone number. They can call whenever. But a lot of times we have to, when we say doing things differently, we can't stop at that first number on that contact list. We have to go through that list and make sure we are making ourselves available. And like you know, we always talk about, especially with Loyola, modeling the way. That is a sentiment that at Ed Heights, my principal and the staff, that we live by, because if I share with you, I want you to try a different form of communication, guess what? I'm going to try 4 other ways, and then I'm going to share that information with you. So we have to make sure that we create a space for parents to just vent and then give our suggestions, make sure we share that information with the teacher, but we also have to make sure that we're supporting the teachers too, because a lot of our staff members and myself, like, we're parents too,
Right.
trying to figure this out as well.
Right.
So.
We
Can I
have
add in
we
something,
have
Dr.
a,
Smith?
yes, and then I'm going to go to the chat. We have a number of questions in our Q&A in our chat. So go ahead, Tracy.
Okay, so real quick, so to support our parents with moving into the virtual space, city leaders have been charged with offering family orientation for parents. So we're having a parent university where we're asking parents, they can either come in or participate virtually, and they're going to go through the entire day as a student would online. So we're going to show them how to log in, the different platforms that kids have to go through, all the way through the entire day until they log off, so that they'll have a better understanding of what our kids are responsible for, and they can help them with troubleshooting when they have issues with whether it's for just getting online, or have any questions about what it is that they're working with at home. And also,
what's been your participation rate, number and participation rate for the Parent University Academy?
Right, so it hasn't started yet. It will start out once we finish with summer school, so within the next 2 weeks.
So how many do you anticipate hosting?
I would love for all of our parents to be a part. And for those that cannot, our technology teacher has posted a lot of tutorials on our school website that parents will be able to watch and go through step by step.
Great, thank you. Miss Cheryl, I think this is a question for you. In the Q&A, is the school system as a whole financially prepared to adequately educate our children during the COVID environment?
That I just saw that question. That is that had my brain working. That's an that's an excellent question, because our budget was greatly cut. And a lot of things are very different. But what I can say is this, from every bargaining agent has stepped up to make a commitment to be in this for the long haul. That's a good thing. But beyond that, Dr. Williams's compass is very, very basic, I believe. It goes to the heart of good education. And I think that what Dr. Okay, Tamara, I know that your last name's not Harris. What's your last name? What's
Harris Murphy.
Murphy, that's right, has already pointed out. Listening to her before we started and doing this, it is very clear that what they have been very committed to are the human services. And the human services are alive and well. And those things are going to happen. And everything we've heard here from someone saying, having the virtual recess, etc. So what we do have in terms of funding goes to those very basic accoutrements that are a part of good education, good instruction, and they're not going to change. And as someone just said on the chat, we've got to, again, we have to change that paradigm. It's going to make us think about how do we address for real the emotional, social learning of our children. And it not just being, we need the technology and they're all going to get that, but it is making us think differently. One of the hardest things to get to is, what are we going to do about our children who don't have Wi-Fi? It's like, oh, right, we do have those children in our system, but you see how this pandemic has made us now come to grips with the fact that we're not all on the same playing field. So that means we are going to, and we are out there looking for those things to do. Someone said, what are the bus drivers doing? Get the bus drivers to go to communities where there are hot spots and we can put children on those buses. That was the co-chair of the board. It is going to make a difference. So yes, I truly believe that we have what is necessary with everything everyone has said to make this happen. We must make this happen.
To be innovative.
Failure is not an option here.
Absolutely. Here's a question. It's about substitute teachers. We have two. How do substitute teachers fit in? So, and then there was another question about substitute teachers in terms of how are they being trained?
Anybody got that?
For our school administrators?
Well, I can just speak a little bit to that. I do know that when we had our meeting with our executive leadership last week or a couple weeks ago, that question was posed, and we are taking the all hands on deck approach because one, we're outside of the school building, so that's already sometimes going to cause an issue. So we want to make sure that even in this virtual space that the students are receiving the instruction that they would receive on a daily basis. So we've actually talked about not so much using substitute teachers that we have in the past, but looking at, okay, this reading specialist is free from this time to this time, so they're going to teach third grade reading for this third grade class. Or the math resource teacher is going to teach a math class or a math lesson for this teacher's class, so they're still receiving instruction from resource staff or teachers within the building. And just being transparent, I know myself and my principal too said, you know, we're a part of that community too. So we don't want the gap to widen. So we're looking collectively as how can we use the resources within our school building to step in for those classes that may need coverage.
Okay, great. Here's a question. Oh, Bishop, did you have a comment?
No, I'm just saying, wow.
Okay, here's a comment, and I heard this comment about grading and reporting. I heard it from parents, I heard it from staff members. So the question is, it's from our Q&A. Will grades count in the fall, or will teachers simply give students a pass-fail? How will students be assessed, especially if you are a special education teacher who typically administers face-to-face instruction?
Can I jump in?
Go right ahead.
So the fall will look a lot different than the spring. So it will certainly mimic a regular school day. Attendance will be taken. And students, we're going back to our previous grading policy, where 70% of the grade is based on assessments and 30% on homework and classwork. So kids will be required to attend those classes and complete the required assignments in order to get grades. You know, in the spring, it was a little different. We kind of jumped in real quick in order to get things up and running for kids, but the new school year will certainly mimic and look and feel like a regular school day.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. I'll pivot to another question. This is a follow-up. It was just posted in the chat about substitutes. Can teachers substitute virtually? And I had that thought too. So will the system hire, for example, a long-term sub if a teacher takes leave, or if a teacher is absent for one day for professional development or sick leave? Will they hire a substitute? So are they calling in to the subsystem in Montgomery County? What's that protocol like?
So short answer for Montgomery County is yes. So teachers our subs are allowed to fill in for a day or for long-term purposes. And we handle it similar to what we handled it in the past. We enter into our subsystem electronically, or the teacher would call the sub and make sure that they make a connection verbally, let our secretary know, and she could do the electronic paperwork if necessary. But it's a pretty simple task.
Okay, great, thank you.
Myra,
It's the same for Baltimore City.
go right ahead.
Thank you, Tracy. Go ahead, Bishop.
Can I pose a question to Dr. Lomax? Dr. Lomax, this is so brand new. And maybe the teachers, the administrators can jump in, because I think this will involve them too. It's new to everybody. It's a brand new paradigm. And Cheryl had, I mean, Sister Pasteur has said appropriately that we must be innovative. And that's a mindset that we all have to enter this fall with, that this is going to be a new ball game and we've got to be innovative. How would you suggest, and what do you think is being done for teachers who have not been trained to teach virtually, but are adapting to teach virtually? And I would, and Dr. Mason, I know we're going to have to hear from you on this too. They're not trained for it. And so those high achievers who have been accustomed to hitting their marks, to always scoring, for the principals that are on, these are your high achievers, your high performers in your schools who have always done well, but they haven't seen this before, and this is totally new, and their performance levels are going to drop and not remain high. Can you offer suggestions to the staff, as we would call everyone on tonight? Can you offer suggestions to the staff two ways? One, how to maintain your high performers. And number two, how to maybe grow your low performers.
When I listen to you talk, Bishop, about our overachievers and our staff used to hitting their marks, those are the overachievers I think of. I'm not thinking about the students. And so what I want to say, which is why I said before, I don't want you feeling guilty. I'm going to say adjust your expectations. My goal would not be for them to continue to try to, continue to put that kind of stress on themselves, because it's an unreasonable expectation. Not only is this something we've never seen before, the finish line keeps moving. So it's not something new that we can now adapt to and look at it. My son, for example, goes to Howard University. They said they were going to have hybrid classes. We got them all settled. And then now they're doing all virtual. Well, we've already signed a year's lease. He's in his apartment in DC, ready to go. And so it just is what it is. And so, okay, well, now we're doing something different. So I think that not only do you have to remind yourself, I, as a teacher and as a professional, am trying to survive this pandemic just like everybody else. You have got to give yourself a break. You have got to adjust your expectations of yourself and of the students. I mean, to Dr. Pasteur's opinion about being innovative, you have to think outside of the box. Often overachievers use the word should, and I have no doubt the staff is using the word should. I should be able to do this. I should be able to hit this mark. Should is the word of the devil. Should is a word that I want to be stricken from everyone's vocabulary, because stating it automatically says to yourself and to anybody you're speaking to that you did not do something right, that you did not meet a mark, that you are subpar. You should have been able to do that. Well, the reality is this is where we are. Should contributes directly to cognitive dissonance, which contributes directly to anxiety and depression. And once you get into that, now you're not going to be any good for yourself, your family, your children, the other staff. And so we have to adjust that for ourselves. And have boundaries. I appreciate my colleague, Dr. Murphy, who said that you should be able to, there's that word, that staff needs to be available for parents, and that if it's at 10 o'clock at night, I'm still going to strongly encourage that you set boundaries. If you allow yourself to receive calls at 10 o'clock, let that be one night a week. It's not every single night. You have got to be able to turn it off, because if you don't, you are going to burn out.
Right.
Well, let me
And
ask you, can I follow up with this?
Okay, Bishop.
If we are, and this is if we are assuming, or are we assuming, that results might be different this academic year than if this were the normal academic year, does that mean that there will be some overall change to educational requirements and mandates if the assumption is that the educational accomplishments may not be as high as they normally would or should for students in certain grades and whatever, that a second grader may not come out as last year. Last year's grades ended at pass, fail, and whatever, which is a way of saying we know it's not going to be what it is. But does that mean that we then change the total outcome for the 12 years? Does 12 years now have to be 13 years?
Well, no, Bishop Thomas, with all due respect, what I'm hearing is a lack of innovation when you talk. I'm hearing that you're using the measures from the old.
Okay.
And so I think that we need to address all of this differently. And I would encourage my Maryland staff to remind themselves the entire country is going through the same thing. And the University of Southern California, for example, has already changed their mandate. They're not even using SAT scores anymore. I mean, so colleges and universities are already making adjustments. They want to know that if you're in your essay, did you help your family? Oh, wait, you helped
Right.
you had somebody, because what we've not discussed today is how COVID is also present. People are sick. People are losing family members. We've not even talked about grief and the trauma that's associated with that, and how that impacts performance of students and staff and faculty.
Right.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
a great point. I'm going to pivot to our chat and Q&A. Here's from the chat. Some principals have told their teachers that they will be checking their online classes to make sure that they are using the tools. What do you say to those teachers? And I'm going to follow up with that. Observations and evaluations. Status quo, is that remaining true to protocol to our school administrators?
So our observation and evaluations protocol, we have not gotten guidance on that yet for this upcoming school year. But I think it's important for every administrator to still, as I say, visit the classrooms in this virtual space as you would every day in the building. So my principal and I, what we did was we split the building. 1 week I had K through 2 grades. That same week she had 3 through 5 in special areas. So we would not bombard them at the same time, but we just split the building and we would be visiting in and out of classrooms, 10 minutes at a time. One, to see the students, let the students see us. Also, we had, at the end of Google sessions, we had parents, lean into the camera, have a quick question, responding to the parents. But we want to make sure that there is still that relationship piece is business as normal. So just like we would walk around the building every single morning, we want to do the same in this virtual space. And the teachers know, like we met with the faculty because a question did come up when we just started appearing in classes. So we decided, okay, for this faculty meeting, we're going to scratch the agenda and have open dialogue with the teachers. So the teachers did share their concerns because they said, this is new for us. Are you observing us? And we simply said, we just want to see the kids. And we want to see all of the chances that you're taking because we allow the staff to take chances. As long as you are teaching to that grade level standard, we are giving you freedom to take chances in this space. So that's important, again, just going back to the same way you walk around the building and hop into classes when we're in the building, you need to do the same in this virtual space. It's
Right.
just so important.
Great.
Okay,
Damon,
here's
Damon, can I pivot you to another question because it's about a school? Thank you, Ms. Murphy. It's a school with similar demographics as Wheaton Woods. A school it's high poverty, low performing community in Baltimore City. And so the panel, the attendee is seeking some ideas about how to get students to log in every day, which I think is critical because I've heard that in some communities as well. So what were some strategies from our school administrators? How are you encouraging students to log in?
So we have, when the pandemic first occurred, we knew our kids had, and it sounds like this community also from the attendee, had a myriad concerns, right? You got concerns about academic issues that the kids might have now that we're in this new space, connectivity issues, social emotional issues, physical health, mental health, food, nutrition, you name it. Like our families have issues with housing and employment. It runs the gamut. And that is a holistic list of supports that our students and their families need. So we created a holistic, or we tried to create a holistic support system in our school. And we called it the Student Support Team. And really what the purpose of that team was to coordinate the development and the implementation and the evaluation of the wraparound supports that we provided for kids and their families. So our team was made up of our assistant principal and principal, the school counselor, our parent community coordinator, our pupil personnel worker, our school psychologist, family case. Like we had a bunch of folks. And those folks, we had a tiered, sort of multi-tiered system of supports for engagement. So when the teacher noticed that something was not right, teacher would engage with the student, then the teacher would engage with the family, then the teacher would connect the student support team, and we connect with the student and the families. So sometimes that connection looked like emails and phone calls and text messages from one of us or one of our paraeducators who had a relationship with the teacher or with the parent. Sometimes it was a home visit, socially distanced, but like my assistant, Liz Collins, she's awesome. She and my community school liaison, Helen Winder, she's awesome too. Like in the Bebe Casse, my parent community coordinator, they went out to homes, knocked on doors, then stood back, or rang doorbells, then stood back. Hey, just checking in. We haven't seen you in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Missed you last week. And parents just said, what? I didn't know. Well, we need it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can I pick up on that, piggyback on that? Because the question that comes in my mind is, this is all new. I mean, we're steadily talking two things. One, paradigm shift. And it's not that we're talking there's going to be the paradigm has shifted. And we're talking innovation. Not that we have to think about innovation, we must be innovative. My question is, given those two polls for the goalposts, has the system, the Maryland State educational system, or the various county systems, or each individual school set up, or is it planning to set up what I would call a knowledge base of experiences? So that, for example, say I'm a teacher and I'm taking my class to an art show, to an art gallery. Dr. Pasteur, let me just throw this to you. I'm taking my class to an art gallery. What's something I might think about? Or I'm doing a gallery presentation.
Okay, and you know, that whole gallery thing is something that interests me. Use that as an example. You know how those of you in the schools, teachers do gallery walks and all of those things. So I'm thinking even how or what we tell our parents' children need in terms of materials should be different and will be different. Because if now children are doing breakout rooms to do group work, and maybe they need the large newsprint paper that they never needed to get before, so that whoever is the scribe is taking notes, etc. So when they come back and they're in the bathroom, wherever the laptop is, I don't know, and they put the piece of paper up on the wall so that everybody can see it. You know, that's what I'm talking about. Everything is very different. What we are asking, not just for teachers, but for children, will be different, and it's exciting. So even how we take children to the museum, the real one, how we go from one frame to the next frame looking at things, or going to museums. We've all now experienced the whole new thing, watching concerts virtually, doing all manner of things virtually. So what a field trip looks like is different. I mean, can't we just embrace that now we're taking children to plays and museums that for whatever reason they never went before because it was too hard to find the substitute and the bus cost too much and the tickets cost too much, and now it's happening and we're growing our children exponentially. So I'm kind of pumped by the whole thing, personally.
But see, the key is,
I don't even know if I
but no, that's the good thing. Now, say, so the teacher says, okay, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need this. So the knowledge bank that I'm thinking about, then you at the end of your lesson, you look at your lesson and say, this succeeded, this went well. But now there's a teacher down the hall who's really 15 miles away teaching the same class and doesn't know that. But if you write yours up, and not just in your lesson plan book, but now you put it in the knowledge bank of your school or your school system or whatever, then when I'm doing a gallery trip, or when I'm getting ready to say, maybe I want to take my children to a play, I can go to what you've already stored and learn from it, so that I'm getting learning from other teachers, other administrators, so that when I was listening to Dr. Harris talk about what they did at the school to get people to log in and whatever, if that's institutionalized so that everybody knows we need to record our best practices and what works well, so that it becomes part of the handbook for everybody else. Because one of the groups that bothers me or concerns me is I know so much of our special ed teaching has been done face-to-face. And now that that's removed, I'm wondering what kind of tools are being developed for special ed teachers. Because you see how Dr. Pasteur is just thinking these are, but what kind of tools are coming for special ed teachers? And if we could have some kind of knowledge bank for them.
So we actually have, within Baltimore County, we have our online platform is Schoology. And within Schoology, back in the spring, we actually created, we call it the Ed Heights Learning Hub. And we created a place where numerous resources, just like you're speaking of, Bishop, numerous resources in electronic folders. And we, like every grade level had their own folder. The special educators had their folder, reading specialists had their folder. And then we had a folder for parent resources. So if I have a parent that's having trouble logging in, I can go to that folder, I can download that form, I can email it to the parent, and then I can also follow back up with the parent as well. So I know in Baltimore County, we have that platform already available for us. It's just a matter of other schools creating it. And it's interesting you bring that up, because we said like our handbook and different things that we would get hard copies of this year, we're going to clean up the Learning Hub from the spring, and we're going to start transitioning into the fall using that resource. So now if I am a teacher, and teachers sometimes struggle with collaborating face-to-face, but if I'm on my sofa and it's, teachers stay up late, midnight, and they say, you know what, I heard about Miss A's, math lesson or a online tool that she used. I know that Miss A is, a third grade teacher. I click into that third grade folder. I see her link and I can learn on my own, but then I can also, when we have grade level collaborative sessions, I can then have that conversation face-to-face with my grade level team. So it's a lot, we keep talking about the shift. A lot of our meetings that were face-to-face, they're gonna have to be intentionally different as well.
Yes.
To make sure that collaboration is really built in
Right.
on a weekly or bi-weekly basis for our staff members,
Right.
you know, to work together.
Tamara, tell me the name of that app. Someone in the chat wanted to know that app that you just talked about.
It's Schoology. So
Schoology.
I know different systems have different platforms, but BCPS uses Schoology. And you
Great.
can create a, we call them groups or courses. You can create a group, and we created our Ed Heights Learning Hub in there.
Okay. Dr. Mason, did you have a comment going back to mental health before I go back to the Q&A, or were you able to get that in, that comment in?
I wasn't able to get that in, but I will say that as we think about how we're approaching virtual instruction, it goes back to what many of the panels have talked about in terms of the impact of COVID and how it has, you know, adversely impacted our staff and our families. And it's important that as a part of the instructional day, that time be set aside for school psychologists to be able to meet individually with students so they can have their individual sessions. There's a platform called doxy.me. That's the platform that's approved for mental health providers to provide telehealth. And so when COVID-19 hit, we had to train all of our psychologists and all of our counselors on the utilization of that particular platform. And during the period of time between March and the end of the school year, we had documented that we had met with 2,000 students individually because we were paying attention to referrals from teachers, observations from administrators about the needs of students, and parents could also request or ask for individual counseling from a psychologist and or social worker or counselor. So that's going to be, you know, really important. And then finally, I love what Ms. Murphy was saying in reference to the collaboration with the teachers. We have to recognize that the majority of special education students have average to above average intelligence. Only 1% are those group of students who have the intellectual deficiencies. We need to make sure that the model of instruction, whether it be co-teaching, is still happening, even in a virtual platform. That special ed teacher and the general education teacher have to plan, develop those lessons, and ensure that those accommodations are adjusted and incorporated into the lesson, and then also provide small group instruction. So I just wanted to add those particular factors.
Dr. Smith, may I jump in because Dr. Williams, superintendent of Baltimore County, is watching, and he told me I needed to jump in here first to say,
absolutely.
Dr. Murphy, he said you're on it. And he went right to your comments about teacher collaboration. And he wants everyone to know in Baltimore County, we are on that, okay? And we're on it, and that's a part of what we're doing during this period. It's a part of his compass. And remember, I started by saying way back a year ago when we first met him, he said, his thinking is that one office doesn't know what the other office is doing, and that we're coming together to make sure that is happening. And kudos to you from him, Dr. Harris. So now I'm giving
excellent
comments. Thank you.
I'm going to pivot because you talked about the specialist and that collaboration. Talk about special area teachers, librarians, art, music, and physical education. So are students experiencing and participating in those special area subjects, which you know that's important for some of our students?
Yes, so in the spring, we actually met with our special area teachers, and rightly so, they were concerned about, you know, that's their craft and it's just as important, you know, music is just as important as math. So is art. And, you know, in those special areas, that's where we see kids, a lot of our kids who struggle in their content areas, they come alive. So what they did was they actually picked a grade level and they met with each grade level on a rotating basis. One, on their off days, not off, but on their live session days, they jumped into classes. And during our collaboration sessions, they actually said, what do you have coming up? What can I do to help and then enhance? So I just think about our amazing music teacher who created a song, an original song, to support a story that third grade was reading. I think about our PE teacher that jumped in on a math lesson, kindergarten math lesson, who the students were building teen numbers. So every time they built the number in various ways with their classroom teacher, then the PE teacher chose a different movement and they counted together like they did 15 jumping jacks after they built, 15 a variety of ways with their teacher. The library media specialist, as well as the art teacher, again, just created her lessons to support the grade level that she was supporting. So again, it was just that collaborative piece, but on top of that, they actually did live sessions, 30 minutes every day. So I know moving forward, because like some of the classes would have over 100 students in there, even though we split the grade levels. Moving forward in the fall, obviously they'll have their own set times for each individual class.
Excellent. Here's a question: in the virtual learning platform, how will students be graded, or are they graded on a day when their internet is not working or the device is not working? And or there's a storm and no one can access on the virtual learning platform.
There's no harm, right? They do no harm, right? So we extend grace not only to ourselves, because we've been talking a lot about that as grown-ups, but we definitely extend grace to our children and their families. So that is where that is. The more importantly for us is, how do we now go back to backfill the content that the student missed? So that we have the folks who are our interventionists, our paraeducators, our special education teachers, like those folks really need to create that community of care and coordinate the supports for those students to help them catch up.
Great.
Dr. Myra.
Go ahead, Bishop.
Dr. Myra, I know you're getting ready to close, and I just wanted to ask this. I saw it in the chat, and I as a grandparent, I saw it to be real. When we switch from in the classroom at a desk listening to the teacher to doing classrooms on the computer and on Zoom and on tablets and the like, many children went from an old-fashioned paradigm to their new reality. Now, what I mean by that is, sitting in a classroom listening to the teacher is something they do in school. When they come home, they live on tablets. They live on instruments, doing all their work on that. But they live on them in video games. Like one, for example, my grandson's 7 years old. He lives on Fortnite. There are others that live. My question would be, given where children find a home virtually, where they're already finding a residence, a community virtually, is there any plan at all in the educational process to use where they live to enhance some of the content that you're trying to get across?
Well, I think, Bishop, that there are so many platforms that as educators, we must avail ourselves to. I think our districts and our technology specialists in districts, and one platform that comes to mind, our students are so adept at using technology, and a way to assess their learning is have them create a video to talk about what they've learned and apply that learning. And that's a program called Nearpod. And so the teacher this is what I want you to do. Here's a prompt. And so I need you to respond to this prompt, create a video. And that, I think, is different. It's not pencil paper. Another strategy is, I would hope that teachers are not wedded to pencil paper because they can't submit something through pencil paper. So how about thinking about cross-curricular projects that, again, it is covering and having students to respond to the reading, language arts, the sciences, and the mathematics. And so that's how you, and that is a project that might not be due at the end of the class period, but it's due next week. And again, students can then be placed in groups and they can share in breakout rooms and virtual breakout rooms what they've learned. I see Dr. Harris is shaking his head. So I think that's that innovation that our teachers need to avail themselves to and be comfortable in the virtual platform, and then exploring different virtual opportunities for students to showcase what they know.
Okay, that got me.
And teachers come with a wealth of knowledge. They know so much about what's going on right now virtually. So we are implementing some train the trainer models where teachers that are skilled in something, or if they know about something that they want to share with the entire staff, they'll have the opportunity to do that, because I've learned so many new tools lately that I didn't even know exist. Especially from, some of our younger teachers. They have so much experience in this right now. So
exactly.
We're absolutely working together and showing each other what to do as we navigate through this process.
Thank you. Bishop, can we have this one last question? And I don't know, I think it's really important because it speaks to how are schools and how's the state supporting schools in handling and obtaining PPE, masks, sanitary wipes, and cleaning products for schools. Is that being addressed? And I think that that's an important question.
Yes.
So we can close on that.
So for us, because we had the summer school model, the district, Baltimore City Schools did provide PPE for us. Many of our students came with their own masks, but we did have masks on hand in case someone did show up without it. We wouldn't turn anybody away. So even before we started the summer program, because we are in charge of our own budgets, I was able to order some things before they became scarce, right? Because now it's hard to find anything. So whatever it is that I could find for my school, I was able to obtain some of those things. Some things I ordered in March that I still haven't received yet. But the district is providing us with some of the things that we need moving forward.
Amen.
Can I add one thing about the spiritual, like a part of our spiritual PPE, and not in a religious sense necessarily, but it is the focus on anti-racism, white supremacy, and anti-bias. That still needs to be a part of what we're doing. We know we have other things we need to work on, but we need to make sure we stay in that lane also, because that work is always there.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Bishop, I'll pivot back to you.
Would you all listen, panelists? Thank you all so much. Dr. Myra, thank you so much. I hope everyone on the panel has really enjoyed this, and I hope all of you who've been attending have really enjoyed this. I hope you heard that the schools individually are going to be finding a way to connect with all the families to make sure that you are aware of how to be prepared for this coming school year. I hope you heard also in listening that there are wide resources that the schools are availing themselves to, so that this learning experience is not some haphazard thrown together event, but that is put together with the solid intent of educating our boys and girls. And I hope you've heard the sincerity from the heart of each person speaking here, that this is not about we can't do it. This is about we have no choice and we will do it. We are surrounded by a village. It takes a village, they say, to raise a child. It takes everybody to raise the child. And that's what they're saying. We're putting all that we could not fix before, we have an opportunity to try to fix now. Somebody would say, but this is the worst of situations. Well, sometimes out of the worst of situations becomes the best of that which can be brought. So that, and I will put it in a theological sense, God has broken down all of the walls that we've hidden behind for why things are the way they are, and given us the opportunity to build anew. Now it's fresh, it's brand new, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be challenging. We'll feel like Daniel Boone coming through Kentucky, coming through Nashville, Tennessee, but that's all right. We'll get it done and we'll do it well. Because you've heard from our panel tonight, we have people dedicated to this. Their heart blood is in this. And God would have not picked another time to allow this to happen. This is happening when the resources are all laying around, just waiting to be assembled in a brand new way. And that's what excites me. And that's why we had this tonight. Now, this is going to live on YouTube, and it's going to live on Facebook Live and on New Psalmist's site. So please tell your friends, your fellow educators to come here. If they get down about what's going on, tell them to come to this site and watch this, and let the panelists lift their spirits. Because regardless of what they said, as Dr. Lomax said, guilt is a wasted effort. It always has been and always will be. It's about moving forward, and that's what we're going to do. So thanks to everybody who's been a part of this. Myra, have I left anything undone? Joshua, we need to thank our chat workers.
Yes.
We need to thank our monitors. Let me thank all of our monitors in all of our different chat rooms. Thank you so much, Tracy. Thanks, Kyrie. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Joy. Thanks, Joshua. Thank you to everybody who has worked so hard to make this happen. And coming up, we're going to have a future, for all of our educators, we're going to have a future town hall on technology. We're going to have a future town hall strictly on technology, where you get to find out the systems, all the different things. I mean, that it was going to be led by a professor at the university who teaches this to the up and coming teachers. So keep that in mind. And when you hear about it, jump on. Myra, thank you again for putting it together and doing such a marvelous job. Everybody, can we give one last smile for the camera as we get ready to go off? Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.